when we were looking at the checklist for this exhibition and preparing how we wanted it to come together, it became really clear very quickly that Edward Hopper participated in American travel culture in one very specific way as this, he was a straight, white, middle-class American man, and he's often portrayed as this all-American experience when he really was just participating in one facet of American travel culture while it was booming. So for us, it was important to make that a learning outcome of the exhibition, to learn about these different types of experiences.
Yes, so because we wanted guests to be able to learn about all these other different kinds of experiences, we focused on 4 other different personal stories to get across some of these experiences, because we know that there's as many Americans as there's that many different kinds of travel stories.
We wanted to get into some of these stories of underrepresented groups who are traveling in the United States by diving into actual personal stories that we were able to find in secondary sources on the subjects.
Yes, so one of the points is that we wanted to tell these stories using the voices of the travelers or people themselves. So while we weren't able to find oral histories or recordings of people talking about their experiences, we did find specific sources that told their specific story, and sometimes in their specific words as well.
Yeah, I think a good example would be the interview we found in a magazine about the couple that runs a motel, right? And so it was able to be them voicing all these problems they were having, kind of hilariously, but in a very relatable way, I think. The Green Book is an incredible resource for us looking back historically on how African Americans were traveling during the 20th century. It was published for decades, even beyond when the Civil Rights Act was enacted, and it was written, the guy who published it, his last name was Green. It was also published with green ink, so it was very characteristic. And it listed all these places where it would be safe for an African American traveler to stay or eat or find entertainment in different cities. But it also wasn't the be-all, end-all experience. They were published every year, but sometimes the information, by the end of the year, it would be out of date. Maybe a place had closed down or a new place had opened. It also wasn't the only book like this. There were a couple others that were available on the market, so to speak. One was even for a slightly higher, it was kind of like at a higher price point. You could tell by the ads that it was for people who were slightly more affluent who were traveling. And again, sometimes you just had to go by word of mouth. Sometimes the Green Book wasn't going to get you all the way there. Some cities aren't represented in it at all, so it's tricky. It was tough, especially because we were under some time constraints, right? So there's got to be all these stories out there that we weren't quite able to get to because we had to make decisions on a timeline.
There sure were. So for example, to try to find stories about people who work in motels and hotels, there are some archives on the East Coast about hotel workers in the early 20th century. However, time and money constraints prevented us from pursuing those stories. Available resources online included some government reports and statistics, but that didn't capture their stories. So we were able to find some other sources, but I think a big lesson of this particular research project is that not everything is online. Sometimes you really have to go to a historical society or a library to get to the original sources.
Amen.